Hi, it's Louise at Spiral Bright Insight. I'm here to talk about the solar eclipse, which is happening on Sunday, the 21st of September. And as always, there is quite a lot to share about this eclipse and why it is particularly special. But before I go any further, if you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm a galactic and an intuitive astrologer, and with these videos I share insight and musings about various astrological events, things that are going on in our world through the stars, and I bring in fixed stars, cosmic points, asteroids, dwarf planets, any of the archetypes really that are speaking to me at this time. So if you're not already on it, I invite you to join my mailing list because I'm currently sending out a weekly newsletter, which I'm getting really beautiful feedback on, and where I share what is coming up for the week ahead, pulling out the key energies and giving some sort of narrative about what that might mean. So please do sign up for that. There's a link in the description box below, and you can also sign up via my website. And if you're interested in exploring your own galactic chart or your own connection with specific asteroids or dwarf planets or energies that you may have come across, and I do one-to-one readings, so please do have a look at what is available again on my website. But let's talk about this eclipse. So I will show you the chart in a few minutes, but just to sort of set the scene, eclipses are always a big deal because they disrupt the natural sort of course of nature in terms of how the sun and the moon are showing up in the sky. Historically, they were always sort of regarded perhaps as ominous, that they carried an omen, and people would pay attention. And certainly because of this disruptive nature, they can often act energetically like wild cards. The rules are reversed or even thrown out the window. They don't necessarily apply. It's often a chance to really see things that have been hidden. And depending on what type of eclipse it is, things can be removed from our lives, from our worlds quite dramatically and quite unexpectedly. So, it's always a little bit, I guess it feels quite Uranian actually when we're thinking about eclipse energy. Now, this particular eclipse is the pairing to the full total lunar eclipse that we had in Pisces on the 7th of September. So this is a partial solar eclipse in Virgo. Now, what makes this special is that it is at 29 degrees of Virgo. So we have the anaretic degree, the crisis degree, but this is the second of two consecutive new moons in Virgo. So our previous new moon was at 0 degrees of Virgo. So there is a really, really strong energy here of completion. We've had two Virgo new moons at the beginning and at the end, and we've been working with the Virgo energy very strongly all month, but we're kind of coming to the end of a cycle, even though this is a new moon. And the fact that we're working with sort of completion and ending energy is even more enhanced with the fact that this is a south node eclipse. So the south node is in Virgo, and it's close enough to the sun and the moon at 29 degrees of Virgo to be an eclipse. We're also obviously in September, which is the 9th month. So we've got the 9 energy. We're in 2025, which is a 9-year. I've say this, regularly. We're also working with the snake energy, the year of the snake, which is about shedding, releasing, transformation, deep power, deep wisdom. So there's a real sort of feeling that we're coming to the end of a cycle, even though this is a new moon and a solar eclipse. So with new moons, we are seeding something cannot normally, a new moon, you can't see what is going on because the sun and the moon are so close together that there's no solar light on the surface of the moon for it to be visible. But when there is an eclipse, we can see the shadow of the moon. So this is absolutely about something at this time being made visible that perhaps we weren't supposed to see, or we would not be able to see normally. Some sort of shadow is emerging, is visible, which is going to disrupt the natural order. And with Virgo as the as sort of the moon and the sun are in Virgo. We're working with Mercury, which is the ruling planet, so we will absolutely be looking to see what Mercury is doing in the chart. But again, if you saw my last new moon video about Virgo, I've already talked about the Virgo themes, but this really is mutable energy. It's mutable earth, but with mutable energy, things are shifting and changing. Anything can happen when we're working with mutable energy. It's about being open to change, and this is very much what the eclipse needs us to do. It's also about service, very practical service in Virgo, about embodiment and body and the body's feedback. And if we think of Mercury as the ruler of Virgo, this is about information, insight that is coming through at a very physical level, but also through the body. So again, I've talked about this in my last sort of new moon video about Virgo, but listening to the body is really, really critical at this time, because there's just so much wisdom. There's so many messages that are coming through the physical, and it's also going to apply to the earth because we're working with mutable earth. So Gaia herself is giving us a lot of feedback at this time. Now, what else makes it significant is because the sun and the moon are at 29 degrees of Virgo, they are going to move into, cross that threshold and move into Libra. So the moon will go first, and then the following day the sun will move to 0 degrees of Libra, which is the equinox. So this is the start of a new season. This is a reset. This is a pause. This is a time when we have equal day and night, when we come into the center point, the sense of balance, the sense of equilibrium, and we start to really focus on the Libra themes. But before we get there, we have this eclipse to navigate. And, because it's the anaretic degree, 29 degrees of Virgo, there is crisis energy here. Anaretic degrees, can be quite tricky. They are about mastery. We've got as far as we can go with the Virgo energy, for this cycle, for this solar cycle, and certainly for this lunar cycle as well. But it can often bring about a crisis, or something that has to happen really quickly because we need to complete in order to be able to move forward. But if we haven't quite completed, and we haven't quite sort of let go or done all the things that we were meant to do in the Virgo part of our chart, the universe may suddenly sort of throw you a curveball, or throw us a curveball, in order to make sure that we do the work before we move into the equinox, when we have time to pause. So with the South Node, this is the closing of a chapter. This is moving away from things that we have outgrown, things that we've completed. We do work with the South Node energy, absolutely, but we only want to bring it through from the South Node what can sort of guide us, lead us, and support us as we work forward towards the North Node, towards our soul's evolution. There will be parts of our South Node, our past, that we are ready to let go of. And again, this eclipse is really making sure that we do that. And again, with all this kind of ending, closure, completion type energy coming through, there's no way that you can't that you can't be affected by this. And obviously it's going to be different for everybody, but with Virgo, which is about our day-to-day work, how we sort of show up, our jobs, what we're doing sort of at a practical, almost mundane level, there's likely to be big changes for many of us in terms of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, how we're showing up, how we're organizing our life, how we're streamlining our life. Virgo is also about digestion. So, this may apply in a sort of food, dietary sort of perspective, but it also might be, what are you taking in? What energies are you digesting? What information are you digesting? And again, all of this is up for review. And although we are seeding something, we're bringing in something new, there's a real sense that in order to do that, we have to let go, we have to surrender. And I will be talking about the fact that the new moon is also opposing Saturn in the chart in a minute. But there's definitely an energy of a reset. It feels like a tipping point. It feels like we've gone as far as we can go before we kind of create this new, whatever it is that's coming in through the equinox. And it's also worth noting that all the outer planets are activated. But again, I will highlight that in the chart. So, new habits, new routines, new ways of self-care, new healing methods, new healing gifts, anything to do with animals as well is often sort of affected or activated with Virgo. So pets, again, it's going to be different for all of us, but these are some of the themes that, you might be keeping an eye out for. And also have a look to see where 29 degrees of Virgo is falling in your chart, to see which part of your chart, which part of your life is really in the spotlight at this time. So what we'll do is I will show you the chart now. Okay, so normally my charts would look a lot busier than this, but I've been really guided, particularly working with the Virgo energy, to strip everything back. And, this is kind of one of the key themes and key messages of this eclipse. We are coming to reset. We have got to the point where everything just feels overwhelming. There is so much information available. There are so many different beliefs, different opinions, different inputs, information, we're literally being bombarded. It's affecting our nervous system, which it will absolutely do, because Virgo does sort of affect and influence the nervous system through the mind, through this kind of mental overwhelm and how it affects the body in a physical way. But also just in terms of what's going on in our world. And I did an energy check-in the other day, and this was really about, it does feel like all the emotions are coming up to be felt, all the shadow is coming up to be seen, to be witnessed, to be exposed. And, all the energies are flooding in from the sun, from, other kind of planetary bodies. It just feels like it's too much. And it's almost like we've just got to the point where we've taken on so much, to be so useful, to serve, and to just go to the nth degree. And yeah, it's like, okay, with the equinox coming up and with this eclipse, we have this opportunity to check in now and to recognize that it might just have become too much. And what is the answer? When we just go into overwhelm, obviously for some, there will be a complete breakdown, and often that needs to happen in order to break through. But we also have a choice, a conscious choice, to say, I cannot physically take on any more than I am at full capacity. There is no more space. There's no more room. There's no leeway here. I just need to pause and to stop. And I feel that, the universe is going to likely be creating that for a lot of us, where we have over delivered, where we have overserved, where we have tried to be too useful, coming from a place of heart consciousness, of loving service, of devotion, sacred, divine, need, desire to help, to support, to guide. But there's also a kind of recognition, a check-in that actually sometimes you can go far too far, you can push yourself too far. And it's at this point that almost this chart is saying, right, come on, let's just pare it back and let's just settle down, try and come into that sort of that center point, which is where the sun moving into 0 degrees of Libra, and the equinox energy is going to guide us and sort of invite us through. So just looking at this chart, normally I would go into a lot of detail, have all my asteroids showing, but I've decided not to on this occasion, because there's one main pattern that I want to talk about, and there's also we will just talk about Mercury as well. So Sun and Moon at 29 degrees, 5 minutes of Virgo, in opposition to Saturn in Pisces and into Neptune in Aries. Now the Sun and the Moon will come into an exact opposition with Neptune as they move into early Libra, but this is still a very valid and strong opposition. And then if we bring in these outer planets, Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, we have Uranus retrograde in Gemini, we can see this incredible kite formation. And I'm going to talk about the kite pattern when I come back to camera, but this is really, really beautiful and very much, part of the chart and the messages that are coming through. And then just to briefly mention, we have Mars at 29 degrees of Libra. So this is the anoretic degree. So we've got a double dose of anoretic crisis energy. Mars is going to move into Scorpio the following day. And then we also have the South Node in Virgo. So again, close enough to be an eclipse. This is the nodal axis with the North Node in Pisces. And then Mercury, which is the ruling sort of planet of this solar eclipse, is conjunct the sun and the moon. It's slightly wider than personally I would work with, but it's still very much part of this eclipse. So this is about bringing in the mind, our understanding, our mental kind of processing, what we're thinking, what we're communicating, what we're sharing, the stories, etc. But there is a really key galactic connection here with Mercury as well that I'm going to come back to. So I'm going to come back to the camera now. And yeah, let's talk about this kite, because I was sort of doing a little bit more research. I've worked with kites before and I find them fascinating. That they're striking aspects when we see them in the chart, and they are formed with the base of a trine, a grand trine, with a grand minor triangle on the top. So there will be an opposition between the bottom of the kite and the top, the apex, which in this case is created through the sun and the moon at the bottom with Saturn and Neptune at the top. So this is creating the opposition, the push-pull, the tension. And then at the two sides supporting, we have sextiles to Saturn and Neptune with Uranus and Pluto, and those two outer planets are creating the grand trine with Sun and Moon. Now this grand trine it's an out of sign or an out of element grand trine, because the Sun and Moon are still in Earth, whereas Pluto and Uranus are in air. But as the sun and the moon move into Libra, they're going to activate this trine and this kite pattern even more. But it is relevant in this eclipse chart, so I want to talk about it. So with the grand trine, we've got flow. I'm really sort of feeling into the fact that, the base of this trine and the bottom of this kite is earth. So this is about grounding the energies. This is about embodying. This is making sure that we kind of use the more spiritual aspects that are coming through Pisces and the opposition to Saturn in Pisces, and ground it in, embody it, make it real, bring in some real sort of tangible, real world energy to what may have previously been regarded as ethereal or not real, or just kind of a figment of our imagination. Absolutely not. It's crucial at this time that we're bringing our spiritual selves in, that we're grounding in the higher self, that we're creating that bridge, that connection between the two, with the physical and the spiritual, because this is the way that we move forward. And of course, bear in mind that the North Node is in Pisces, showing us the way. At this time, humanity's evolution absolutely relies on us remembering that we are spiritual beings, that we are souls in a physical body, and this is how we grow. This is how we take flight. Now with this grand trine, this is very stabilizing energy. It creates flow, it creates ease, there is grace here. But with the grand trine on its own, it can sometimes be difficult to, I guess, experience growth, because everything just feels so comfortable. And sometimes, the energy's moving in a trine, they just keep flowing from one corner to the next, from one planet to the next, and there is no tension, there's no sort of force to kind of make things happen. So when we add in the opposition, which creates the kite shape, this is where the tension comes, this is where the catalyst, the momentum comes through, and this is how we use the base, the grand trine energy, to really help us take flight and to kind of go where we need to go. So this is what propels us forward. So with the trine, the energies are there, the potential is there, but it can often feel as if it's latent, as it needs a push to kind of get it going. And if you've got a grand trine in your chart, this is often the case. The gifts are there, the abilities there, the skills are there, but it takes a little bit of effort or something maybe slightly uncomfortable to almost give you the momentum to propel you forward to start using them, because it can just be like, oh yeah, that's what I do, and that's what I can do. But it's like, no, you need to really kind of get these beautiful gifts and start using them, because this is why you came here. So the kite needs this tension to set off, and I'm sort of thinking it's through the opposition that creates the tension. It is the sun and the moon, so the eclipse that is acting as the anchor or the tether for this kite, this kind of almost this launch pad. And it is through remembering and coming fully into the body and grounding and remembering that we are here to serve through Virgo, that we are able to have liftoff and to soar higher into more unity consciousness, into a more expanded understanding of who we are, into this beautiful sort of universal unity, where we're at one with all that is. And this is where Saturn is here to really kind of make sure that we get this lesson, that we master this understanding, because this is how we move forward. This is where humanity is moving towards. So, but the reminder with the eclipse is that we can only be reborn, we can only step into the more mystical expression of ourselves if we are able to ground that in, because it won't work if we're too much in the body and we just think we're here, we're just human, it's mundane, it's day to day. Great, that serves a purpose. But if we forget that we're spiritual, if we forget that we have this higher self with all this wisdom, with all this knowledge, and this kind of team of, I guess, other realmly, other dimensional beings, and the fact that also we have our multidimensional self as well. If we're forgetting that, if we're separated from that, if we're disconnected from that, then we've kind of missed the point. This is about bringing the two together so that they are fully connected, so that we can sort of step into this new version of humanity, remembering fully who we are and what we are capable of, and how the physical body, the vessel, is the vessel for the soul. So this is really about how we awaken to more of who we are, we remember who we are, we raise our consciousness through doing so, and ultimately how we are going to be reborn. So Saturn in Pisces is kind of, and with Neptune as well in Aries, this is about dissolving the limitations that perhaps have been there, that have restricted us, or, kind of prevented us from remembering who we are. But also Neptune in Aries is kind of giving rise to this new sense of sovereignty, this new sense of leadership that is based on more compassion, but is also based on a full remembrance of the self, of the identity, remembering who we are. And this is what we need to move forward. And Saturn is really helping us to, I guess, embody the dream, to make the dream come true. And we have to ground that in and ground that down. With the sextiles on either side, Uranus and Gemini is about revolutionary energy. This is reform, this is awakening, this is higher consciousness, this is electrifying, activating, new memories coming through, facts of information coming to light that really kind of shake us out of our comfort zone. This is really like, high frequency energy, but Uranus wants us to awaken, wants us to remember, the potential and all the information that perhaps has been unavailable or disconnected or, just forgotten until this time. And then with Pluto on the other side, these are outer planets, this is collective. Pluto is here to really help us uncover, to look beneath the surface, to excavate the truth, to see the shadow for what it is, to support humanity through the Aquarius energy, and really digging and exposing, power issues, but also helping us to understand that we are powerful. as individuals within the collective, but also as a collective. And we're seeing the collapse of all these structures that have been held in place to keep us in this one state, and this is all really breaking down. We're breaking out of it, we're kind of coming out of our shell, and the only way is up. But to get up, we have to come down. So to ascend and to remember all of who we are, we need to come into the body as well and ground that truth, ground that understanding, ground those memories and that wisdom. It's really, really important. So with the kite aspect, this is a very sort of destiny type pattern. If you've got one in the chart, you're going to feel that you're here for something important. It's very fated. It is all about growth. It's about rising up, being able to see the bigger picture, which it's often a gift in itself, but also being able to, I guess, allow, what is happening, the currents, the energies to almost, I guess, guide the kite. There's not always a set pattern or a set dance or a set movement with the kite. It's the wind, the air, the energy, the collective sort of, waves that are going to dictate the movement of this flight. And again, it's about being adaptable, but also about having that freedom of movement. And understanding as well that it's actually, the physical body and our service, and, the fact that we are embodied and that we are serving our spirit by being embodied at this time, that is keeping us tethered, that is giving us that anchor. And with the sun and the moon together, this is about our conscious self and our subconscious self blending together, uniting, so that we feel at ease with ourselves. We can feel at ease with this new understanding, this new way of being, which is coming through the eclipse. So the old ideas, the old patterns, the old conditioning, particularly when it comes to mindset, belief, stories, communications, messages, all that is potentially being eclipsed out at this time, so that we can remember, so that we can set ourselves free, so that we can fly high, we can dip and soar and move around and allow the collective energies to carry us in exactly the direction that we are meant to go. So with the kite, again, this is about sort of destiny and purpose, but it also requires that little bit of tension, that little bit of conflict to launch us. And I think this is what we're going through now. May not be just a little bit, but with this opposition and the energy, and obviously the sun will come in to create an exact opposition with Neptune the following day. That can blur lines, but it's also, again, reminding ourselves that we are so much more than the physical, that there is such a mystical, magical side to us, and that if we can remember that and pull that in, the possibilities are absolutely endless. So this is ultimately about rising up, but also remembering that to rise, we have to come down as well. So in terms of the galactic energies, there were just a couple that I wanted to talk about. Again, I don't want to overwhelm, because I'm very conscious that Virgo is about streamlining, paring back, sort of bringing sort of structure, but order as well. And there's so much disorder and chaos in our world. Whenever we can find some order, it's like, yes, I'll have some of that, please. But and also mindful that, there's just a lot of information. So although I'm talking a lot, and this is probably going to be a fairly lengthy video again, I don't want to bombard you and overwhelm you with loads of different energies. So there's two that I want to talk about specifically. The first is Scheat. Now, Scheat is in the Pegasus constellation, Scheat, and it's at 29 degrees of Pisces. So if you get my newsletter or you follow me on social media, I've said that this is my start of the week. I'm picking a new one each week to highlight and to sort of dive deep and explore. And this is Pegasus energy. So this is the way shower. Scheat is conjunct Saturn, is opposing this new moon at this eclipse, and it is also very close to Neptune, and Neptune is going to, in retrograde motion, come back and form an exact conjunction with Scheat, and this will happen again as Saturn and Neptune move forward in early 2026. So This star is Pegasus. This is the way shower, the flying horse, the winged horse, the messenger. It's all about breaking free of the chains that have kept us bound. And often we don't know that we are in prison. We don't know that we have chains. We don't know that we're limited. But Scheat is very much about releasing us from that state of being. And of course, with Mercury here as well, playing a big part in this eclipse, this is often about sort of the chains that we are carrying, that are mental, the beliefs, this kind of the conditioning, the patterning, the stories that we have been told to believe. We are breaking free of them. This can be uncomfortable because, when we're sort of set free, it can be like, oh my goodness, where do I go? I was quite comfortable in my sort of my prison, my container, feeling safe. But, there is no choice but to break free. And with Scheat, this is very much about multi-dimensional energy as well, being able to fly high, rise high, see the bigger picture, look beyond the horizon, have faith and trust that the higher self, the universe, this dance, the kite knows exactly where to go. We don't need the answers. We don't need to have understanding, logic, sort of a plan, a list. It's about trusting and having faith that if we are ready to liberate ourselves, then the potential is just absolutely vast. And it's about having, I guess, the courage to let go, because often, it is letting go that is really terrifying. And I'm always reminded as I'm talking about that, saying, what if I fall? But actually, what if you fly? We have this kind of mindset that, everything's going to go wrong. And especially just coming back to, quickly, this whole sense of we are, everything in our world is a cycle, and we have been sort of programmed, taught, learned that that death, the end of something, finality, is somehow something to fear, that it's a really bad thing. But actually, every death, and death is part of our natural cycle. We will, all of us are going to die, but again, it's such taboo. It's something that creates so much fear, and yet nature doesn't have that fear. Everything comes to an end in nature, and then the cycle continues. And it's like releasing ourselves from the fear that the ending is somehow something that we must resist and sort of, kind of hold ourselves back from. But just, having this faith that we, everything is just constantly moving. And with the fact that the eclipse at 29 degrees moves straight into equinox, I'm just reminded of, we can make this transition absolutely effortlessly, seamlessly. There doesn't have to be resistance. And Scheat in opposition with Saturn, this is the lesson I feel that is coming through. We have to have the faith and be able and willing to let go and just trust that, yes, things are coming to an end, and yes, things are going to be eclipsed out, and yes, things are changing, and our day-to-day world might change quite dramatically over the coming months. We don't know what's going to happen, but we have to just trust that all of this is a process, and we've been here before. As souls, we know that everything is cyclical. We know that is kind of universal law, and yet from the human perspective, we often forget, and that creates the fear, that creates the resistance. But actually, it's just like, no, this is just, whatever happens, this cycle will keep on turning, the clock keeps on moving, the planets keep moving around the chart, there's not a cutoff or a starting point. It's just effortless, it's seamless. And this feels like the message for this eclipse. So with Scheat, this is at the tail of the horse. So again, just to kind of repeat what I said, right at the back, right at the end, you almost can't see it. So it's about just, let go, and we need to let go of these programs and these ideas if we are going to set ourselves free. So Pegasus, Scheat is very much of that message and that energy. And Saturn here is saying we need to remember, we need to master this, we need to kind of learn this lesson and do this work and almost tick this one off our list, because without it, we're not going to be able to get to the next level. And the other energy that is really significant is the super galactic center. So this is conjunct Mercury. Super galactic center is at 2.5 degrees of Libra. Mercury is at 5, nearly 6 degrees at this eclipse, but it's really significant. And of course, the sun and the moon are going to come round and meet the supergalactic center as well. So the supergalactic center is one of the cosmic points. This is a massive gravitational, sort of magnetic black hole type energy, gravitational pull, pulling us away, pulling us out beyond what we know, beyond the mundane, beyond the 3D, the sort of the physical, our understanding of reality. And with Mercury here, this is all about understanding and information. So it's like this vast cosmic intelligence is just pulling us towards it. It's like we can't avoid it, that we kind of, once you get caught in this cosmic point energy, it's like you have no other option but to be stretched, to go beyond. And this is about taking us beyond our understanding, new beliefs, which is going to seem quite crazy to so many of us. But it's like, no, we just need to know more. We need to know more. And it's going to pull us so far away from what we think we know and what we've believed and the stories we've told ourselves, that yes, it might feel as if we're literally letting go of everything and we're having to step into this void. And it's like a cosmic womb when we're working with the supergalactic center. I think Philip Sedgwick has described this as well. It's like into this nothingness, so far away from what we've known and our point of reference and our anchor, that we almost have to let go and surrender and step into this nothingness. But it is in this nothingness, and if we think about the womb, the void space, this is where the creation can happen. This is where the potential of the new can come, the new idea, the new understanding. But we have to move far away from the old in order to get there. And ultimately, we are stretched so far away from ourselves. Cosmic supergalactic center is also a cosmic mirror, so it's about seeing, I guess, these bigger truths kind of on this massive cosmic, galactic screen in ways that perhaps we've not been able to see before. New energies are just opening up, and it just feels so vast. Yes, it has the potential to overwhelm us, but again, what is the response to overwhelm? It's like, right, I need to stop. I've just taken on too much. And with this, it's like I've tried to know too much. It's like, just stop. It's come into the silence, almost the darkness of this eclipse, this new moon, the void space, before we move into the equinox. And as we move into the equinox, we're coming to balance, and it's like the stillness and the being present with the self. And that's when the insight can come. That's when the downloads can come. That is when the new understanding can come. But it's almost like we can't get there unless we push ourselves as far as we think, or, beyond where we believe we can go. And this is what the eclipse is doing. This is what the anaretic degree of Virgo is doing. This is what the supergalactic center is doing. And it will ultimately give us this new understanding of how vast we are, how we are part of something so much bigger, how we are connected. And I believe that as we start to remember this, and I know a lot of us do remember already, but it's, everyone is going to finally catch up. And again, it's not overnight, but, this is the start of it. This is the seeding of it. It's like when we remember that we are just this kind of dot in this vast kind of galactic cosmic universal landscape, it just is going to change, I guess, our day-to-day lives in ways that, we can't quite fathom at the moment. And I guess this is also the new moon solar eclipse in Virgo, which is about the day-to-day lives. It's like this new understanding is going to have such an impact on how we live, how we interact with one another, how we relate to one another through Saturn in Pisces and this unity consciousness, moving away from separation, moving away from disconnection as well, which is ultimately our biggest wound, our greatest wound for humanity, because we have believed that we've separated, and but actually we haven't. So like, this kind of cosmic alignment is just like, wow. And it's going to help us to, it's going to shift our perspective, no question. But it's like we get to the point with the supergalactic center where the poor me, the victim, I'm on my own kind of narrative just no longer cuts it, because we're being shown something completely different, and it's going to be hard to ignore. So I think as this happens, it's like happen at different stages, different levels, different speeds for all of us. It's about resisting the temptation to kind of go into that old, I guess, Virgo busy way, where there is some space. I have to fill it. I've got some time. I need to be busy. It's like, no, use the momentum of the equinox, use the momentum of the supergalactic center and the void to just to step into the stillness, because it is from this space that is created, that the new can come in. But we have to get to this point where we're so overwhelmed and we've done too much, we've taken on so much, we've kind of almost like got as far as we can go in order to be able to access this space. And I think this is what is going on. I mentioned this in my energy check-in video. I feel that we're almost getting to the point where there is just too much, so it forces us to go, stop. And this is kind of what I feel is happening at this solar eclipse. So it will be different for everybody. But if it happens, just allow it to happen and surrender and trust. And don't, I guess, go into a fear narrative. Because, you know, when you step into the fear narrative, that's when the resistance comes. And that's when it's like, oh, no, this is too much. It's just like being absolutely present. And I'll just finish by also reminding myself, really, that because this is mutable earth and Virgo is an earth sign, it's also not only about embodiment and seeing the vessel as this sacred container for the soul to express itself and for the soul to, I guess, be able to bring the higher frequency into the earth, but actually earth is critical at this time as well. And we've talked about that in a lot of my videos, but it is about finding ways to honor earth, to serve her. And, you know, again, we're all going to have different ways of doing it. This can be through grid work. You know, my friends giving crystals to the earth and to the trees. And, you know, again, it's connecting into the network because there is so much gold, there's so much value, and there's so much support and love that is available when we do connect to earth. So it's about remembering that we are part of Gaia. Although we are connected to something vast, we're also very much part of earth, and especially in physical form. You know, this is also something that we are here to remember. And I think as more and more of us remember and awaken to that, you know, we can start moving away from conflict or the destruction, the devastation, you know, the abuse of the earth and her people and the abuse of humanity. So that sounds quite big, but this is what I'm being shown. So I hope it resonates with you. And yeah, it does feel like, you know, this particular eclipse season has been just like, completely wild. Just, oh my goodness, so much growth, so much of everything has come through. But I kind of take that as a good sign, because it's like, you know, we're in it now. You know, whatever it is that we came here to do, we're actually doing it. And it is about anchoring in and holding the line and being that tether for the kite, you know, so that our energies can fly, so that we can all step into our purpose, so that we can remember who we are, we can bring that spiritual self back in and, you know, bring that integration through. And yeah, it all feels really rather special. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you have thought, if it's resonated, if it, you know, maybe what I've said has triggered some sort of like, oh my goodness, I hadn't thought of it like that before. Please share, because I know people do read the comments. I read the comments, and yeah, it's just, yeah, I love the fact that we have got a community here. Just a reminder that I do welcome donations. So if you want to exchange for my content and make a donation, I've got a PayPal button. I think there's a Stripe link actually on my website as well, donate here button, and I've also got a super thanks. So really welcome, really appreciate, grateful for all donations. I've already reminded you about the mailing list, and yeah, the like and subscribe. Hopefully you do that anyway. But again, thank you so much for watching, and I will be back soon.